देवियों सज्जनों नमस्कार, पुनः स्वागत, अभिनंदन। नाट्य गति उत्सव इसका 5वां दिवस और हम अग्रसर हैं संध्या सत्र की ओर। नाट्य गति उत्सव संगीत नाटक अकादमी नई दिल्ली, संस्कृति मंत्रालय भारत सरकार की ओर से आयोजित किया गया है और जैसा आप सब जानते हैं, भारत की स्वतंत्रता के 75 वर्षों के उपलक्ष्य में राष्ट्र आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहा है। भारत सरकार द्वारा इस अवसर पर कई कार्यक्रमों का आयोजन किया जा रहा है और इन्हीं कार्यक्रमों का हिस्सा है आइकॉनिक वीक। नाट्य गति उत्सव इसी आइकॉनिक वीक का हिस्सा है और इसी के अंतर्गत इसे आयोजित किया गया है, जिसमें 3 सत्रों में विभाजित समय पर आप बहुत सी प्रस्तुतियों का आनंद उठा रहे हैं। साथ ही कार्यशाला भी चल रही है और इसके साथ कुछ व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन भी आप देख पा रहे हैं। पुनः आप सभी का स्वागत करते हैं, अभिनंदन करते हैं। आज की प्रस्तुति की ओर हम अग्रसर होते हैं। प्रस्तुति अराइवल, व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन कथक इनसाइड आउट, संकल्पना, संरचना और प्रस्तुति विक्रम अयंगर, कोलकाता की है। इस प्रस्तुति को 2 भागों में विभाजित किया गया है। एक प्रस्तुति अराइवल और उसके बाद एक सहभागी व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन कथक इनसाइड आउट, जिसमें कुछ लोग सहभागिता भी कर सकते हैं। अराइवल एक एकल प्रस्तुति है जिसके भाव कुछ इस प्रकार हैं। हमसे बड़ी जो एक शक्ति है उससे हमारा संबंध है जो घटता और बढ़ता रहता है। इसी संबंध को समझने और इसका चित्र खींचने के लिए बांग्ला कहावत जो तो मोत तो पोत अर्थात जितने दृष्टिकोण हैं उतने ही रास्ते हैं से प्रेरित होकर इस प्रस्तुति में आध्यात्मिक संगीत की विभिन्न शैलियों जैसे गुरबानी, सूफियाना और बाउल का आलंबन ग्रहण किया गया है। प्रस्तुति अराइवल व्यक्ति और ईश्वर के बीच संबंधों की विभिन्न संभावनाओं पर और प्रश्नों की उपजाऊ जमीन पर सामाजिक मुद्दों की खोजबीन करता है। धर्म के संबंध में विचार करने पर कई प्रश्नों और शंकाओं से हमारा सामना होता है और उन पर हमारी भावनात्मक प्रतिक्रियाएं भी अलग अलग होती हैं। इन प्रतिक्रियाओं के एक छोर पर तपस्या और धर्मनिष्ठा है तो दूसरी छोर पर उपद्रव है। संभावनाओं के इन्हीं और छोर की खोज की परिणति है अराइवल। इस प्रस्तुति को आपके समक्ष रख रहे हैं श्री विक्रम अयंगर। विक्रम अयंगर एक नर्तक, कोरियोग्राफर, निर्देशक, क्यूरेटर, प्रस्तुतकर्ता और कला शोधकर्ता व लेखक हैं। वे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर काम कर रहे हैं। उनका काम अभ्यास, व्याख्यान, समालोचना, विचार और प्रबंधन तक फैला हुआ है। विक्रम अयंगर ने रानी कर्णा जी से कथक प्रशिक्षण ग्रहण किया है। उन्होंने अकादमी पुरस्कार विजेता फ्लोरियन गेलेनबर्गर की फिल्म शैडो इन टाइम के लिए कोरियोग्राफी दी है और साथ ही हेलेना वॉल्डमैन के फास्ट पुरस्कार नामांकित प्रस्तुति मेड इन बांग्लादेश के लिए भी सह कोरियोग्राफी की है। 2013 से उन्होंने एकल और सामूहिक नृत्य प्रस्तुतियों पर भारतीय समकालीन नर्तक कोरियोग्राफर प्रीति अथरैया के साथ नियमित रूप से काम किया है। विक्रम अयंगर कई अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संस्थाओं के साथ जुड़े हैं जिसमें इनमैक्स, अर्थिंग, साउथ एशिया आर्ट मैनेजमेंट, इंटरनेशनल सोसाइटी फॉर द परफॉर्मिंग और ऑस्ट्रेलिया कला परिषद भी शामिल है। उन्हें समकालीन नृत्य के क्षेत्र में उनकी प्रतिभा को प्रोत्साहित करने के लिए संगीत नाटक अकादमी उस्ताद बिस्मिल्लाह खां युवा पुरस्कार वर्ष 2013 से भी सम्मानित किया जा चुका है। अब हम श्री विक्रम अयंगर को उनकी प्रस्तुति आरंभ करने का निवेदन करते हैं।
रामदास सरोवर नाते, सब उतरे पाप कमाते, सब उतरे पाप कमाते, रामदास सरोवर नाते, निर्मल होके करे स्नाना, निर्मल होके करे स्नाना, गुरुपुरे किन दाना, गुरुपुरे किन दाना, रामदास सरोवर नाते, सब कुशल खेम परग तारे, सब कुशल खेम परग पारे, सही सलामत थोक बारे, हे गुरु के शब्द विचारे, गुरु के शब्द विचारे, रामदास सरोवर नाते, साधु संग मन लाथे, पार ब्रह्म भय साथी साथी, नानक नाम ध्याये, नानक नाम ध्याये, आदि पुरख प्रभु पाए, आदि पुरख प्रभु पाए, रामदास सरोवर नाहिए, सब उतरे पाप
अपनी छब बनाई के जो मैं पी के पास गई, छब देखी जो पिया की तो अपनी भूल गई, छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुँह से नैना मिलाई के। सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के 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 अपनी सी कर दी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के बात अधम कर दी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना आहा रे मुझसे नैना आहा रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के प्रेम भटेका माथवा पिलाई के प्रेम भटेका माथवा पिलाई के माथवा पिलाई के माथवा पिलाई के मतवारी कर दी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के मतवारी कर दी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना आहा रे मुझसे नैना आहा रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के बल बल जाऊं मैं तोरे रंग रिझवा बल बल जाऊं मैं तोरे रंग रिझवा तोरे रंग रिझवा तोरे रंग रिझवा अपनी सी रंग दीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के अपनी सी रंग दीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के खुसरो 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 निजाम के पल पल जाइए खुसरो निजाम के पल पल जाइए पल पल जाइए पल पल जाइए मोहे सुहागन की रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के मोहे सुहागन की रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के 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 अपनी सी कर दी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के अपनी सी कर दी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना आहा रे मुझसे नैना आहा रे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के
সত্য কাজে কেউ নয় রাজি, এই সত্য কাজে কেউ নয় রাজি। জাত গেল বলে একই আজব কারখানা জাত গেল বলে সত্য কাজে কেউ নয় রাজি সত্য কাজে কেউ নয় রাজি সবই দেখি টানা নানা জাত গেল বলে একই আজব কারখানা জাত গেল বলে আসবার কালে কি জাত ছিলে এসে তুমি কি জাত হলে আসবার কালে কি জাত ছিলে এসে তুমি কি জাত হলে কি জাত হবা যাবার কালে কি জাত হবা যাবার কালে সেই কথা ভেবে বলো না জাত গেল বলে একই আজব কারখানা জাত গেল বলে ব্রাহ্মণ সান্ডাল সামার মুসি এক জালে সব হয় গো সুসি ব্রাহ্মণ সান্ডাল সামার মুসি এক জালে সব হয় গো সুসি দেখে শুনে হয় না রুসি দেখে শুনে হয় না রুসি জমে তো কাউকে ছাড়বে না জাত গেল বলে একই আজব কারখানা জাত গেল বলে গোপনে যে বেশ্যার ভাত খায় তাতে ধর্মের কি ক্ষতি হয় গোপনে যে বেশ্যার ভাত খায় তাতে ধর্মের কি ক্ষতি হয় লালন বলে জাতকারে কয় লালন বলে জাতকারে কয় এই ভ্রম তো গেল না জাত গেল বলে একই আজব কারখানা জাত গেল বলে
self-gathering,
a blooming
inwards,
turning
turning gesture into space where no one can follow without leaving a random behind. Self-gathering, a meticulous measure, no less capacious for being capable of compression. Self-gathering, an allowance of fixity within the fluid, a knowing of roots, deep, reaching feet. Self-gathering, an entering so close to closure, there can only be one way out. Self-gathering, a falling upright, composed of filaments, light with heat and hearing. Self-gathering, a sequence of storms taking their time towards calm. Self-gathering, a sinuous thought inside the verticality of mind. Self-gathering, a pause that remembers what is yet to come. Self-gathering, a notation, a sentience, arrival. সমুখ আকাশ
মন চলে দাঁড়াও হে নাথ দাঁড়াও হে এই যে ধরণী চেয়ে বসে আছে ইহার মাধুরী বাড়াও হে ধুলায় বিছানো শ্যামন চলে দাঁড়াও হে নাথ দাঁড়াও হে যাহা কিছু আছে সকলে ছাপিয়া ভুবন ছাপিয়া জীবন ব্যাপিয়া যাহা কিছু আছে সকলে ছাপিয়া ভুবন ছাপিয়া জীবন ব্যাপিয়া দাঁড়াও হে দাঁড়াও যেখানে বিদ্রোহী হিয়া তোমারে লাগিয়া একেলা জাগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে তোমার দৃষ্টি হৃদয়ে লাগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে তোমার দৃষ্টি হৃদয়ে জাগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে দাঁড়াও আমার আখির আগে
दिव्य सज्जनों, अभी आप आनंद उठा रहे थे इस प्रस्तुति का, जिसे आपके समक्ष प्रस्तुत कर रहे थे श्री विक्रम अयंगर कोलकाता से। ये समय है उत्सव का, ये समय है अपनी अतीत को भी याद करने का। आज़ादी के 75 वर्षों के उपलक्ष्य में पूरा राष्ट्र इस समय आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहा है। भारत सरकार द्वारा भी इस उपलक्ष्य में अनेक कार्यक्रम आयोजित किए जा रहे हैं, जिसमें कला, कलाकार और संस्कृति का योगदान अभिन्न है। इन्हीं कार्यक्रमों का हिस्सा है आइकॉनिक वीक, और संगीत नाटक अकादमी नई दिल्ली द्वारा आयोजित नाट्य गति उत्सव भी आइकॉनिक वीक का ही हिस्सा है। इसमें हम 3 सत्रों में विभाजित करके आपके समक्ष व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन, साथ में कार्यशाला और विभिन्न प्रस्तुतियाँ लेकर आ रहे हैं। संगीत नाटक अकादमी संगीत, नृत्य और नाटक की राष्ट्रीय अकादमी है, जैसा कि आप सब जानते हैं। इसकी स्थापना सन 1953 में देश की समृद्ध प्रदर्शन कलाओं के संरक्षण और संवर्धन के उद्देश्य से की गई। इन कलाओं की प्रस्तुतियां, प्रचार प्रसार और प्रशिक्षण करना और साथ ही इन प्रदर्शन कलाओं की डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करना ताकि भविष्य के लिए और आगे आने वाली पीढ़ियों के लिए इसे इसके मौलिक रूप में संरक्षित किया जा सके। संगीत नाटक अकादमी ने इस दायित्व को पूरी निष्ठा के साथ निभाया है। हमारा अभिलेखागार देश के सबसे बड़े अभिलेखागारों में से एक है, जिसमें प्रदर्शन कलाओं से जुड़ी सामग्री का विशाल संग्रह उपलब्ध है। अकादमी की 3 घटक इकाइयाँ और 5 अन्य केंद्र भी हैं जो देश के विभिन्न कोनों में फैले हैं। अकादमी संगीत, नृत्य और नाटक के प्रख्यात कलाकारों को और विद्वानों को रत्न सदस्य भी प्रदान करती है। वर्ष 2006 में युवा कलाकारों को प्रोत्साहन देने के लिए उस्ताद बिस्मिल्लाह खां युवा पुरस्कार की भी स्थापना की गई। हमारे आज के कलाकार श्री विक्रम अयंगर भी उस्ताद बिस्मिल्लाह खां युवा पुरस्कार के अवॉर्डी हैं, इस पुरस्कार से सम्मानित हैं। अब वो हमारे समक्ष प्रस्तुत कर रहे हैं एक व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन, कथक इनसाइड आउट। ये उनके अंदर के अंतर्द्वंद या यूँ कहें उनका एक प्रश्न है कि कथक क्या है? क्या वो हमारे और अपने बाहरी रूप में पहचानने योग्य कोई कला का रूप है, या फिर कथक कोई गहरा अंतर्निहित सिद्धांत है जो अक्सर अदृश्य हो जाता है? हम विक्रम अयंगर जी से उनके व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन को शुरू करने का निवेदन करते हैं।
Worship isn't destructive, Margaret. I know that.
I don't. I only know it's the core of his life. Think about him.
It was sexy. That's what you want to know, isn't it? You're right, it was. I was pushed forward on the horse. There was sweat on my legs. He blinded 6 horses with a metal spike.
I don't think I understood what was happening. How could I imagine I was going deaf at my 20?
The river is a heavenly braid, an immense rope of water, unfurling through a wide and thirsty plain. 2007, Cyclone Rashmi 2008, Cyclone Ayla 2009, Cyclone Koma 2015, Cyclone Roanu 2016, Cyclone Mora 2007, Cyclone Pani 2009, Cyclone Bulbul 2019, Cyclone Amphan 2020.
Hello everyone. Before the lecture demonstration part of my presentation, I wanted to give you a little sense of the kind of work I've been doing to sort of open up conversation about the Kathak trained body. How does a Kathak trained body differ perhaps from a Kathak informed body? Where can Kathak take you? Where can you take Kathak? All these sort of questions. I'm very interested in dialoguing with the form that I am trained in, which is Kathak. And I think over the years I've discovered that all the work that I do in performance is really to try and make the Kathak classical form, what we call a classical form, into more of a dialogue rather than being a monologue, which Kathak is used to being a monologue. It has a certain way of presentation, it has a certain history, a certain tradition, a certain character, a certain carriage. But how can we bring it into conversation with various other expressions? And through that, I've also started looking deeper into the question of what is Kathak ultimately. There is, of course, a recognizable form, an external form. We all know it. If we are here in India, if we're here in this room, we've seen Kathak in some shape or form at some point. Definitely in Delhi, you would have seen a lot of Kathak. But what are the principles, the movement principles, the principles of space, the principles of time, the principles of body, the principles of rhythm? What are those principles that underlie the form that give rise to Kathak as a certain kind of expression? And if we sort of start working with those principles rather than the external form that we are taught and that we teach and that we learn, what happens? That's really been over the last few years my preoccupation. So a few questions. How does a Kathak informed body, as I said, differ from a Kathak trained body? Training is something that is perhaps put on the body and then goes in. But a Kathak informed body is perhaps a body which is slightly more aware of the training that it has, of the capacity that it has, of what it feels like, what Kathak feels like rather than what Kathak looks like or should look like. I'm very interested in that. What does Kathak feel like inside the body? Which leads me to, I think we've already seen some of the work I've done with Preeti Atreya, and Preeti talks very often about a sense of pleasure for the performer, a sense of pleasure in the body. And what is that when one is trying to perform from Kathak, not necessarily performing Kathak, but trying to perform from Kathak or trying to choreograph from Kathak. The other question is I work a lot with performers who are not Kathak trained. Now, of course, you can't train people in Kathak in the space of 2 months or 3 months. So, is it possible then to work with certain concepts of space and body and movement and rhythm that Kathak is built on, and bring them into the world of Kathak through that conceptual understanding rather than through physical body understanding necessarily. Thirdly, what does working with the principles of Kathak what does working with the principles of Kathak as well as the Kathak form bring to us as Kathak dancers? I can only speak personally, but what it has brought me definitely is I have discovered what it feels like within the body to dance from Kathak. We'll talk about that in a little more detail. I have discovered that there is a vast repository of sensibility, not movement, but sensibility that exists in Kathak that I can draw on when working with choreographers like Preeti, who are very contemporary. In the last piece I did with her, I know that I consciously was drawing on a certain Kathak sensibility, not that she asked me to do it, but it was helping me. But unless we start looking at the Kathak form, or any form for that matter, as conceptual as well as technical, it becomes difficult to go there. Going back to what does Kathak feel like in the body, I'd like to talk a little bit about somatics. I think some of you, I can't see anybody, but some of you are doing the workshops every afternoon with Vikram Mohan. I'm sure that this idea of somatics must have come up. But somatics, yes, what does it feel like in the body? But I'd like to introduce how Navtej Johar talks about somatics as doing, observing, then not doing, staying put, and then receiving the effects of both the doing and the observation and the not doing after that. So there's a parallel process of doing, feeling, observing, redoing, which sort of is a cyclical kind of thing, which then takes you to a certain kind of plane which is pleasurable. So I don't want to talk at you too much. I'd like to invite 4 or 5 volunteers on stage to do a very brief exercise with me. It's not anything complicated, so no one has to dance Kathak, so don't be put off. It's just, I'm just going to ask you to walk to a certain beat. Amlan, can we, oh, okay, more than I expected, but fine. The stage is yours. Amlan, metronome, please. So that's the beat. I'm just going to ask you to walk, stepping on the beat. Very simple. And as you're walking, just listen to what I'm saying and try and absorb that and respond to it. ठीक है? हाँ. हिंदी में मुझे मुश्किल होगा, but if someone can translate, can someone help him out? I'll try. मैं try करूँगा, लेकिन मेरा हिंदी अच्छा नहीं है. ठीक है? So take your time. So start walking, just on the beat. Yeah? And try and get the rhythm. No. Whatever you're comfortable with. Keep your eyes up. Look straight ahead. Try and put your heel on the floor first. Very calm, very collected, no rush. Walk wherever you want and walk normally. You're not dancing, you're just walking, you're just human beings walking. It just happens to be a stage that you're walking on. And now try and bring an awareness into where you're walking from. Imagine there's a motor in your hips, right? And that motor, like a cycle pedal, the cycle motor goes around and therefore the pedals go around. So just imagine this motor inside your stomach, and that is making the feet move. No need to raise your knees, nothing, just normal walking. No performative walk. It's just normal walk. Once you've got that, at the same pace, just start walking backwards. So now you'll have to put your toe on the ground first. Yeah. Change direction often so you can see where everybody else is, so you don't bang into people. If you bang into people, it's fine. Just say sorry and move ahead, or move backwards rather. Try not to look behind you. Keep that motor going in your center. Okay. Now walking forwards again. And now we're going to slow down. So instead of stepping on each beat, we'll step every second beat. So we'll go 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Keep that motor going, keep the fluidity of the walk going. Keep your eyes up, look where you're going. Very calm. And now let's try at this pace, moving backwards. And 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Keep changing direction so you don't bang into people. 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Forwards. 1 and 2 and 1. Keep the rhythm. And 2 and force your body to move at this pace. 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Going back to normal, please. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you've come back to the speed that you started with. Just ask yourselves, does your body feel any different after having moved slower? Does your body feel different? Does the speed feel different than it was before? What is that difference? But keep walking and thinking at the same time. The body and mind are not disconnected. You can walk and think at the same time. And now we're going to try the opposite. We're going to move faster. So we're going to do 2 steps every beat. Okay? So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Keep changing direction. Try not to move in circles. 1, 2, 1, 2. We all live in India. We are all used to crowds. So go in and out. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Keep the motor going. Keep the fluid walk going. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now we're going to try something which is a little tough at this speed, and with so many of you. Don't do it till I count you in. We're going to walk backwards at this pace, but we're going to take very small steps, okay? And try. 1, 2. Go back on the toes. 1, 2, 1, 2. Keep changing direction. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Try not to look over your shoulder. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and going forward again. 1, 2, 1, 2, again ask yourself, is this any different now that I've moved back at this pace? What does it feel like to move forward again?
Different state of mind.
Absolutely, different state of mind. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And now we're going to go back to the normal pace, which is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Walking forwards, not backwards. 1, 2, and again, ask yourselves, you move faster. This is the pace you started with. Does it feel different in the body? What is that difference? 1, 2, 1. Moving forwards, not backwards. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now I'm going to count 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we just all come to a standstill wherever you are. 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Okay. We don't have a lot of time to discuss it, but I have a few questions. The difference between walking forward and backwards that the body feels in going through speeds in such quick succession? Any comments?
Yes.
What did you feel inside the body?
It's like कि जब ना स्लो होने के लिए बोला, जैसी नॉर्मल स्पीड पे आने के लिए कहा, वो लगने लगा कि फास्ट कितना फास्ट जाए. अभी फास्ट जाने को बोला, जैसे स्लो होने को हुआ तो एक बिट छूटने लगा और मतलब कि ना और लग रहा कि अभी और स्लो जाने का. तो वो लाइक एक बंधन होता है ना. उससे जैसे ही माइंड फ्री होता है ना, तो वो ओवर करता है उस चीज से, उस बीट से ओवर करने लग जाता है.
ऐसी सेट जब हम जल्दी चलते तो हम ट्राई, तुम्हारे दिमाग में आता है कि हम और जल्दी चले. एज आई टोल्ड यू, वी हैव डिफरेंट स्टेट ऑफ माइंड, सो दैट इज द कनेक्टेड थिंग आई गेस. एंड अनदर थिंग, व्हेन वी स्लो इट फील लाइक वी आर रोबोट्स, एंड व्हेन वी मूव फास्टर इट फील्स लाइक वी आर ह्यूमन बीइंग्स.
Okay, all right.
What happened to me, like when we were moving on a slow pace, so it was like I was feeling more rhythm and more, there was a harmony and balance in the body. But when I was moving fast, when I was moving like backwards, so mind was bit aware and that rhythm was somewhere missing.
Shaken.
Yeah.
So then we start realizing that this business of balance, which we take for granted, because all of us are walking every day.
Yeah.
But this business of balance that we take for granted, it's really something that we should not be taking for
Exactly,
granted. Because in the act of walking, so much is happening in the body that one needs to pinpoint. Thank you so much. Big hand, please, for the wonderful volunteers. Thank you. Thank you. So, this is, of course, a very, very quick sort of crash course into an exercise that usually takes about half an hour. And it goes into faster speeds and slower speeds and moving in certain directions, etc., etc. But it does help give a sense of space, a sense of rhythm, a sense of body, a sense of time, a sense of movement, a sense of other people in the room. And it is very much building on what we train very fundamentally in Kathak, in the Tha, Dugun, Tigun, Chogun, etc., etc., etc. I mean, the basis of Kathak training, if there are any Kathak dancers here, you will know you start with rhythm, and often rhythm is so all-powerful that that's all Kathak seems to offer sometimes. So it's very much built on that, but taking it into a spatial dimension, taking it into a choreographic dimension, taking it into a body awareness kind of dimension. The other thing that I want to point out for this is looking at what are when I say concepts of Kathak, what do I mean? I'll just talk about one or two and maybe demonstrate a few things. One is the vertical stance. In a country which has so many designated classical forms, Kathak is possibly the only one that doesn't have a recognizable bent knee position. We don't have an aramandi, we don't have a chalk. We don't have any of those as our basic stance. Yes, we sit and stand and maybe bend our knees in certain poses, but as the basic stance, it's a very vertical stance. However, when we say vertical, what do we mean? Does everyone mean the same thing when they're saying vertical, especially when it comes to the body? It comes to the physical body, when it comes to the dancing body, the trained dancing body. When you say vertical, does that mean the same for everyone? I'll give you an example. I was working with a ballet dancer a few years ago, just having fun. I mean, I was teaching her some Kathak, she was teaching me some ballet. We were working on another project and we had a lot of time on our hands, and this is what we did to keep ourselves entertained. Kathak is often compared to ballet because of the stance, because of these kinds of movements and those kinds of movements in ballet. There are superficial resemblances. But when she started training me in ballet and when I started training her in Kathak, both of us realized that there is absolutely no way that you can do ballet with a Kathak trained body and no way that you can do Kathak with a ballet trained body. Even though both of us, when we stand next to each other, may look as if we are standing in the same way and holding our bodies in the same way. Which is why I go back to my question, what does Kathak feel like rather than what does Kathak look like? In ballet, if there are any ballet dancers here who know more than me, please correct me if I'm wrong. But what I understood is that you have this extension in the body where you're pushing down and you're pulling up, which allows you to actually do your leg lifts, which I can't do because I'm trained in Kathak, I'm not trained in ballet. But which allows you to, this opening here allows you to pull up for the leg to come off the floor and go God knows where. So all those lifts in ballet, all those extensions which are pulling away from the ground, and Kathak, for all its verticality, actually pushes into the ground. It drops energy into the ground, like I would say most of our dance forms in India and South Asia drop energy into the ground. If I was going to stand like this as a ballet dancer and try to do Kathak, I can't do any footwork because my feet are stuck, because I'm pushing so much into the ground in order to open this and pull up. So I can't do any of the flexible things here at the speeds that I require to do. So when I was teaching her footwork, because she was standing like a ballet dancer, her footwork became like this. Which of course, how fast can you go like that? You can't go to this pace if you're going to dance from your hips. But that is the training of a ballet dancer. And for me, I could not do any leg lifts because I don't have that, neither do I have the strength, nor do I have that extension in the leg. The other thing about Kathak verticality which I think all Kathak dancers would know, is the feet are straight but the knees are soft to allow you to do Tatkar. And it is generally a soft verticality. It's not a rigid verticality at all. It's a very fluid verticality. I remember in a workshop with Kumudini Lakhya, she, years ago, she didn't get upset, but this, people who've worked with Kumi Ben will know that this is her manner of speaking. She looked at all of us and said, "Ye tum Kathak dancer, ye sab torso ke area sab kachra ka dibba bana ke rakhe." So, because we don't move this at all, while Kathak actually has a lot of spine movements which are deflections from the vertical stance. I don't know if Mandeep is here, but my friend Mandeep, he was talking about deflections when I was with him 2 days ago. He's also a choreographer. And this deflection from the vertical, what does it say? So I'm standing like this, and if there is a deflection here, what does it say? I'm not doing any abhinaya, but what does this slight deflection indicate? What does it again feel like in the body, and therefore perhaps what does it feel like in the audience? So just as a demonstration, I'd like to do the opening section of a solo that was choreographed for me by Preeti Atreya. It's called A Cross Not Over. It is designated as a contemporary piece, but the raw material is all Kathak, especially in this section. The raw material is all Kathak. We are playing with deflections from the vertical. We are playing with those small, tiny movements that Kathak has in the upper torso, the movements in the upper back, the meaned, the very gentle, subtle nazakat and ada that Kathak is known for, but reducing it just to this area. How does one then make it project far? One of the things that Preeti asked me to do was to stand actually with my legs rooted down. So in this section, there's no way I can do any tatkar, no footwork. But with my legs rooted down, it allows me to deflect much further. This is still a Kathak deflection, But if my legs are not rooted, I can deflect here. But with my legs rooted, I can deflect much further because this is holding things in place. So I'll just demonstrate that opening section from across not over.
काद, डामदीक, हाथ, हाथ back, curve, left, kneed, lift, drop, center, solo, कांध, छोड़ो, drop, up, dip, shoulder, twist, kneed, Hello? So that was a little bit of dealing with verticality. The other thing I'd like to point out is Kathak's habit of bringing movements back into itself, something that I call self-gathering. So even our linear movements seem to be circular because they come back to this position. And I just want to, it's there in the piece that I performed in Arrival, the poem Self-Gathering, written by Sampurna Chatterjee, the poet. And she and I were working together on a project looking at how poetry uses sound, how Kathak uses sound, and she was trying to understand how Kathak is constructed. And when I was talking to her about this habit of coming back upon itself, she wrote this beautiful poem, which now is part of Arrival. I'll just read it out. Self-gathering, a blooming inwards, turning gesture into space where none can follow without leaving the random behind. Self-gathering, a meticulous measure, no less capacious for being capable of compression. Self-gathering, an allowance of fixity within the fluid, a knowing of roots, deep reaching feet. Self-gathering, an entering so close to closure there can only be one way out. Self-gathering, a falling upright, composed of filaments light with heat and hearing. Self-gathering, a sequence of storms taking their time towards calm. Self-gathering, a sinuous thought inside the verticality of the mind. Self-gathering, a pause that remembers what is yet to come. Self-gathering, a notation, a sentience, arrival. So that's where the name of the piece also comes from. One thing that she mentions about calm is something that I feel Kathak has so much. We work so much with Vilambit. Arguably, Kathak is the dance form that works with Vilambit in a very extended kind of way. It's an expansion of both time and space and allows the body to unfold. You don't do, fast footwork or paranchakradars or anything like that in Vilambit. It really allows the body to be and to appear to itself and to the people who are there to watch it. And I think a little more focus on those aspects of Kathak would benefit a lot of us as Kathak dancers. I sometimes feel that Kathak has become too virtuosic, and we need to find those moments of the vulnerable body, which is there in Kathak. It's not something you have to borrow from somewhere else. But we want to show technique and we want to show skill, which is great. But I think as human beings and as dancers, we need to show a little bit of vulnerability as well. The last thing, I'm coming to it last, but I started with it, the rhythm structure of Kathak. Tal is so central to how Kathak is taught, how Kathak is performed. Again, no other dance form deals with Tal, rhythm with that degree of complexity. Again, when you're looking at Tal as a concept rather than as something to perform, to show Kathak in, there are various ways that you can construct it. Across Not Over, the whole thing is very carefully timed and constructed and marked on an Excel sheet. So that becomes my Tal line. And I'd like to share two little short videos which is about constructing for Tal. One which is definitely from Kathak and one which may not visually be so obviously from Kathak. But before that, I'd like to go back to Arrival to talk about the structure of Arrival. There wasn't I didn't dance Khula Nach at all in Arrival except for the end where the chakkars are. But the whole piece is constructed through the jatis. So you start with a 6-beat cycle, which is Tisra Jati, so 3. You go into the next song is 4. The next song is a 10-beat cycle, so 5. Then the Robindra Shongit is 7, so you've got 3, 4, 5, 7. And then when I start the spins, the song is in 7, but my spins are in 9. So it's constructed on the jatis 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. So again, it's more thinking of Tal, thinking of rhythm as a conceptual, dramaturgical tool rather than as a performative one. Of course, dramaturgical is also a performance tool. But I'd like to end with these 2 short videos. The first one is from a dance film I made last year called Water Bodies. So this is not the whole film. This is a rush. This is one angle from which the piece was shot, and it doesn't have the film soundtrack or anything like that. But it's just one shot, one version that we had shot. And it's structured on a cycle of 9 Mattatal. And it's basically, in terms of movement, a deconstruction of this movement, which is the flow of water, in a sense, which is why it's called Water Bodies. But I'll leave it to you to decide whether it looks like Kathak or whether it should be called Kathak at all. Amlan, the Water Bodies video, please. So that was one of the angles from water bodies. And the last little 2-minute video I want to show is from a production called Shunya Se. Shunya Se is dealing with the 5 elements. It's a very common theme for us as dancers in India. But this section is from Earth, and it's a section I call Talking Feet. Of course, with Earth, Kathak dancers obviously are going to do footwork, right? So, but it was also very important to me as choreographer to find a way to earth the body. So again, going back to the verticality of the Kathak body, how does one cut that and drop it to the ground? So this was an experiment in that. It was an experiment in trying to look at the footwork, look at the feet of Kathak from a slightly different perspective. And also what you saw in one body, not too complicated, but the isolation of the right arm and the left arm. This is in 4 bodies. How do you play with rhythm? How do you layer rhythm? How do you create a soundscape and a visual soundscape as well, using what all Kathak dancers train in? So this is Talking Feet from Shunya Se. So just to go back to what I started with about what does Kathak feel like in the body, for something like this, the four dancers, I was very clever. I choreographed it, but I don't perform this section. So I escape. Because here for the dance, the problem that the dancers ran into, that we're so used to doing tatkar, standing and having a certain relationship with our feet to the rest of the body. Once you do that, even though the feet are actually doing much simpler things than we usually do or that we can do in Kathak footwork, because the relationship with the feet in the rest of the body has been changed or problematized in some way, it became very difficult for them to sort of communicate with their feet, from the brain to the feet. So that connection had to be sort of deconstructed and reconstructed for that position. So these are the kinds of things that I like to play with. And I just want to leave you with two questions from all this. One is from all of this stuff, some of which looks like Kathak, some of which obviously doesn't. What will you call Kathak and what will you not call Kathak, and why? That's a question that I don't think it needs an answer, but it's a question I like to think about. And to borrow and paraphrase, not paraphrase, but literally to borrow from something that Chandralekha said. She said, where does the body begin and end? For me, it's very much where does Kathak begin and where does it end? So with that, thank you very much.
देवियों सज्जनों, श्री विक्रम अयंगर द्वारा अभी आप इस व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन का आनंद उठा रहे थे और इससे पहले उन्होंने अपनी एक प्रस्तुति भी हम सबके समक्ष रखी। इस पूरी प्रस्तुति और व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन में मंच पर बहुत से कलाकारों ने साथ दिया। गायन पर सुदक्षिणा मन्ना चैटर्जी, फैज़ा जसदानवाला और राजेश्वरी गांगुली बनर्जी, जिनकी आवाज़ें आपने सुनी। कविता संपूर्णा चैटर्जी की थी और काव्यपाठ विक्रम अयंगर और संपूर्णा चैटर्जी। ऑर्केस्ट्रा अरेंजमेंट और रिकॉर्डिंग शुभागत सिन्हा, वीडियोग्राफी व छायाचित्र कुणाल चक्रवर्ती, प्रकाश परिकल्पना व संचालन अमलान चौधरी। अमलान जी से हम निवेदन करेंगे कि वो मंच पर आएं। अमलान चौधरी जी। And we request Vikram ji also to come in the center, please. विक्रम जी का हम एक बार फिर से धन्यवाद करते हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। देवियों सज्जनों, इसी के साथ इस सत्र से अब हम विराम लेते हैं। कल सुबह के सत्र में पियाल भट्टाचार्य चिदाकाश कलाया सेंटर ऑफ आर्ट एंड डिविनिटी कोलकाता से व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन और एक प्रस्तुति आप सबके समक्ष रखेंगे। सुबह का सत्र 10:30 बजे से आरंभ हो जाएगा। आप सभी ज़रूर पधारें और व्याख्यान प्रदर्शन का आनंद उठाएं, उससे ज्ञानवर्धन प्राप्त करें। सजीव प्रसारण के माध्यम से भी संगीत नाटक अकेडमी के फेसबुक पेज और साथ ही यूट्यूब चैनल के माध्यम से आप हमारे साथ जुड़ सकते हैं। आप सभी का धन्यवाद करते हैं। बहुत बहुत आभार। शुभ रात्रि। धन्यवाद। नमस्कार।